the most underrated cards from Scholomance Academy. That's right, everybody's favorite time of the expansion when we get to go back and make fun of ourselves for just how bad our reviews were. And this time around, we're taking a look at the most underrated cards based on community rankings. So for instance, if a card was rated the 100th best, but it's being played the most at number 1, that would be a positive difference of 99. It would be very underrated. These 3 cards aren't actually in the video. These are just 3 of the legendaries that almost made the cut because they were fairly underrated. Rattlegore jumping 38 spots, Mozaki jumping 50 spots, and Infiltrator Lillian jumping 54 spots. Now, I gave each of these cards 3 stars. I think that's under the mark, particularly on Infiltrator Lillian. And the community, it turns out, got these wrong, but not as wrong as the cards that are actually in this top 5 list. So before we get into our list of underrated cards, I'd like to thank Dashlane for sponsoring this video. For me, Dashlane is really the ultimate online tool, making your life on the internet a bajillion times easier because it helps you manage everything. It'll autofill all your personal info like credit cards, addresses, and passwords, making online checkouts, like on Blizzard's shop, a total breeze. It also includes VPN, so you'll be able to access content like on Netflix in any country around the globe. If you aren't using a password manager, you probably should be, and Dashlane generates secure encrypted passwords, making its password manager the safest place to store your info. And the coolest part, you can use Dashlane across multiple devices. So head to dashlane.com/Regis to get Dashlane for free on your first device. And when you want to upgrade to premium, use my code Regis for 25% off. So now let's jump into the list, starting off with the 5th most underrated card. It's Jandis Barov. And this one jumped 72 spots. It's pretty big already for being the number 5 card. Now, I gave Jandis 4 stars. I actually thought there was quite a bit of potential here. She's absolutely a 4-star card. Remember that, because that might be the last time I'm right in this video. But Jandis, I think people thought it would just be a little bit awkward. Random 5 drops might not be high quality. One's going to die super duper easily. But it turns out very often Jandis is just a big old pile of stats. She's being played in both Mage and Rogue, is a great mid-game option. For Rogue, that's often at the top end of the curve. For something like Highlander Mage, that's often falling in the middle of the curve. But nonetheless, it's just a great way to get stuff on board. It can be a lot of damage coming through because it's awkward for your opponent to deal with all 3 of these separate components because they don't often have 3 different ways to deal with stuff in the mid game. So 1 or 2 things lingers around, takes some good trades, goes face. You occasionally high roll with ridiculous taunts like Convincing Infiltrator, and that can help be a game winner as well. And it's just so much friction. There's a lot to do and deal with Jandis. So it ends up creating all these great board moments where it just makes an impact. And that's why decks like to run it. It's just one of those harmless cards you can toss in, and it's probably going to contribute to your deck. Now, it's not ever like the star of the deck. It's never the build around defining aspect. So it's absolutely not a 5-star card, but it is a very meta relevant card being played a ton, making it a perfect 4-star mark, even though the community ranked this one much, much lower. And you know what? I'm pretty glad it does see a lot of play because I think it's a really cool design, very fun moments, a lot of drama in every game in which it's played. Some great predictions are possible for this one. So I'm thrilled that Jandis is a great card, and I'm relieved that I actually got one right. Next up here is the Intrepid Initiate, jumping 76 spots. And I was right there, the community on this one. I gave him 2 stars. He's much, much closer to 3.5, 4 stars, I'd say right now. Turns out quite a few aggro decks are able to run this as a great early game minion that often turns into a 3-2 pretty reliably. Pinflinger was another card for me that fell in this mark. It didn't quite make it into the top 5 of the community. They liked it more than I did. But I just didn't think these early game Spellburst cards would be very easy to activate. I thought it'd be really challenging sometimes to get a minion buffed in the early game because you don't have a lot of mana laying around for spells. But this guy gets buffed enough. It actually works out fairly well. And as we know, 3/2s on turn 1 can be very powerful things. We've seen that multiple times in the past. Classic example is Flame Imp. So the upside here seems to be worth the downside. Now, this isn't a card that's being played everywhere, but it has popped into a few prominent lists. I think it's losing momentum today, so in a month, maybe this won't be that great of a card. We'll see as lists get like more refined and tightened up. But for now, this one exceeded my expectations, certainly, and it seems like it exceeded the community's expectations as well. So next up here is a little package of sorts for, of course, pure Libram Paladin, which has been one of the most meta-dominant mech decks in Scholomance Academy. It's losing ground, but certainly has had the biggest impact, I think, in the expansion so far. And the most underrated of this package was First Day of School, jumping 81 spots, but High Abbess Allura and Goody Two Shields also were very close here, of course, to making it on this list. Goody Two Shields, in fact, tying with Jandis. So I thought we'd include all three of these because people clearly missed the mark on this package, on this deck potential, really. And I know for me with First Day of School, I gave it 2 stars. I just thought that you wouldn't want to really draw this, like random 1-drops are too low quality, but it turns out it's just so important and valuable to have a 1-drop and have minions that are sticking on board in pure Libram Paladin because you have so many buff follow-ups that it almost doesn't matter if they're low quality. You just want minions. You want stuff to do. And this very much increases the consistency of your early turns, making sure you're filling in those mana gaps so you don't float anything, and that gives you a lot of sticky minions on board to follow up with big-time buffs. And that's why First Day of School has worked really, really well in that. And of course, there's some crazy high rolls in this too. Not only can you get your own Libram discount card, but you can get things like the Priest Legendary Prime, which can be amazing in a buff deck later as well. So a pretty cool card altogether. Really a 4-star card right now, 100%. Seems like everybody missed that one. Now, for High Abbess Allura, I actually thought Allura had a lot of potential, and I think she is kind of a 4.5, maybe even 5-star card by some arguments. So I may have even underrated her at 4 stars, but certainly the community missed the mark on this one. I think people probably thought Spellburst was going to be awkward. I had been playing pure Libram Paladin before the expansion hit. We just like cruised to Legend with it that month prior. So I knew that there were some opportunities for that deck to get there, and it seemed like Allura supported it so well, and it had some really nice big swingy follow-up spells with like Libram of Hope that it would make sense. Indeed it did. Also here, Goody Two Shields. I believed in a little bit more than the community, putting it at 3 stars, but probably a 4-star card at this stage. Turns out having a really sticky minion where you can get sometimes double utility out of its shield is fantastic in a buff deck. So she also here got underrated altogether. Pure Libram Paladin clearly was much better than people anticipated, it becoming really the go-to deck there for the first week or so. So all of these cards exceeded expectations. All right, next up at the number 2, this one boggles my mind. I can't figure it out. Sneaky Delinquent jumped 98 spots. She was ranked 116th by the community. That's in the bottom 20 cards. That is like absolute garbage territory. That's below like Ancient Voidhound and below certainly Rattlegore and Onyx Mage Scribe and Demonic Studies and Cycle of Hatred, all these terrible cards. And I was right there with him. I didn't think this card had any chance of seeing play because it seems so ridiculously slow. I thought, well, look, Stealth Rogue is the most comparable or fitting class for this. And Stealth Rogue has a 1-mana 3/1 stealth. Why are they running a 2-mana 3/1? The Death Rattle here is so slow as well. Just another bad card being added to your hand. What deck is possibly going to have time to play a card like this one? Well, turns out Stealth Rogue does. We've got a lot of different builds of Rogue right now that are all very aggressive, utilizing early game minions. Greyheart Sage in particular is a really powerful follow-up card. Ash Tongue Slayer. That's a package I really believed in last expansion. I went pretty high on all those cards. Was really disappointed Ash Tongue Slayer like completely failed us. Now, of course, it's living up to expectations on the back of things like Sneaky Delinquent. And it turns out, I went into the data and I was like, look, I got to prove that this card's bad. Why are people playing this? So I went and looked at HS Replay, checked all the win rates for this card, and sure enough, it's not only in the deck, it's one of the best cards in the deck by mulligan and drawn win rate. This thing is fundamental to the success of Stealth Rogue because you really need consistent stealth bodies for the follow-ups. You also just need enough stuff, and this gives you enough stuff because it's 2 cards in 1. So you get to play multiple minions that generally keep hitting face really hard because they're hard for your opponent to deal with multiple waves of stealth minions. So yes, in fact, Sneaky Delinquent is amazing in Stealth Rogue, and frankly, a 4-star card at least, and I gave it 1 star. I just can't believe this thing works. I thought it would be so slow, and here we are. It's really one of the most important meta cards in Scholomance Academy right now. I think pretty much all of us missed the mark on this one, although I'm sure 98% of the people watching this video will go, I knew it, and you'll leave a comment telling me that you had it right the whole time. I believe you, I trust you. Sneaky Delinquent, the second most underrated card. And then finally here for our number 1 spot, maybe no surprise here to a lot of people, Guardian Animals jumping 107 spots. It was ranked 122nd by the community. That's in the bottom 15 cards. That puts it below Gibberling, Shifty Sophomore somehow. I don't understand how that happens. But Guardian Animals, of course, probably the most important meta card early in Scholomance Academy. Certainly with the nerf to Kael'thas, this deck, Guardian Druid's losing a little bit of momentum, but I think this card will still be very good and playable. And I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was going to be a little bit too awkward. It's weird because I actually gave Lake Thresher 3 stars and very specifically called out its synergies with Guardian Animals. So I don't know how I thought Lake Thresher was going to be 3 stars, but Guardian Animals was only going to be 2 because I only thought Lake Thresher would be good with Guardian Animals. So some inconsistencies there, but you know, I'm a crazy person, so don't worry about that. Lake Thresher, if you note, also actually would be number 2 on this list. He's 99 spots underrated. I bundled him together here, of course, because they all are kind of simultaneously underrated as a part of the same package, but also severely underrated. I gave him 3 stars. That was a little more hopeful. Survival of the Fittest, certainly less underrated than these other options, but still barely missing the cut here for this video. I gave it 3 stars. It's definitely way more powerful than 3 stars. It's a great follow-up for all these things with Kael'thas, cheating, big buffs, etc., etc. So altogether, I think as a community, we kind of missed just how impactful this would be. There were people who were saying, look out for Guardian Animals. I think it's going to be crazy. They were out there, but a majority of people didn't like this one. If it was like me, I thought, man, it's just, I don't know if the follow-ups there are the beasts good enough. Certainly Twilight Runner looks pretty strong, but like, what else are you going to run? Is it a big enough swing? Can the deck come together around it? Because, you know, you need all these pieces to support it really well. And I just didn't think it would because I thought, you know, maybe Exotic Mount Seller is just better than this already. It's the same kind of idea. Turns out, I think this is better than Exotic Mount Seller in a lot of ways because it's just more rapid. It has better follow-up. And it's a little bit more instantly swingy than Exotic Mount Seller because you can do it for 7 mana. Mount Seller requires additional follow-up. So yeah, Guardian Animals and Guardian Druid blew everybody's mind, I think, with just how powerful it was. It was like the most frustrating deck to play against on day 1. So clearly, many of us underrated and underrepresented just how important and powerful this card would be. It was indeed the most underrated card of the entire set. And there you go, folks. Those were the 5/10 most underrated cards of Scholomance Academy. And I want to know, which ones did you get right? Which ones were you just baffled by? Do you believe in Sneaky Delinquent? How can it possibly be so good? And make your predictions for the cards you think are going to be most overrated. Because, of course, you know that video is coming very soon. There's one that's a very big standout and then a few surprises as well. And I got to say, I did pretty well on the overrated side of things. Just stay tuned because I'm going to be gloating a lot about I told you so's. I might even pull up some YouTube comments. I told you so. So stay tuned for that video. That was going to be fun for me, or at least more fun than this one. But feel free to shame me in the comments below. Shame the community in the comments below for just how stupid we are. Thanks as much always for watching. Big shout out to our sponsor Dashlane for supporting this video. And until next time, game on.